All right, Brian, you want to show off a little bit here? So much of what we've done has been related to the different movements of Judge Dugan, the federal agents there that day, and Eduardo Flores Ruiz. And especially because we don't have video and audio recording of what's happening in court, it can be really hard for those watching at home, certainly was for me, to kind of get your mind around what played out and how did this happen. So
well, and I think we all do this, right? We have a vision that we play in our heads, a picture or an image or a video or whatever it is we play in our heads of what we think is happening. Of any situation. You hear there was a shooting at some sort, you go, well, what are the facts? And you try to imagine it. But seeing it obviously makes it a lot easier to put all of this together. So one of the first things I did, I've been to the courthouse many times. Yeah. I'm familiar with the courthouse, at least the public areas, so it's easier for me to come up with that picture of what happened. If you don't go there very often, you're trying to figure this out. We wanted to get an actual layout of the courthouse, but for security reasons, they don't just easily hand out the blueprints. Yeah. However, the Milwaukee County Historical Society had blueprints of the courthouse that we were able to get our hands on, including the 6th floor. That's the Milwaukee County Courthouse building you were seeing right there. And those blueprints helped us put together something. I used a program I've never used before, Carl, called Lucid Chart, a free access thing.
Always learning.
To create essentially a layout of the 6th floor in my own crude way. And here it is. We're going to pull it up on my computer.
But this is better because it's actual
the drawing you're seeing here, this is to scale. Well, not to scale. I mean, it's not
roughly,
but roughly, this is what it looked like, and you can see the courtroom. You see sort of the jury box where all those chairs are. There's 3 rows of chairs.
So this is Judge Hannah Dugan's
I think this is my computer. You can see that's the jury box. This is Hannah Dugan's courtroom, courtroom 615. We've seen Jason standing outside of that courtroom. There's the chief judge's office.
Upper right of your screen is that hallway to the chief judge's office that Jason was showing us.
Correct. Now, inside the courtroom here, you see we've got these 2 blue circles. Those represent Eduardo Flores Ruiz and his attorney, and then that is Judge Dugan. Once she comes back into the courtroom, they are waiting. In fact, initially they're waiting in the jury box, which the government has already pointed out is unusual because the jury box is technically off limits to defendants and attorneys and things like that. But nonetheless, ultimately they're standing in the courtroom and they could go out. I'm going to play this. You see where the red arrow is. That would be the normal way that a member of the public or a defendant or attorneys would come in and out of the courtroom. Instead, Judge Dugan, according to the government, tells them, no, go this way. And that where that purple dot is now is the back door of the courtroom that the jury comes in and out of, a jury door.
Court staff would use that as well.
Court staff could use that. The judge would use that. Now, the judge, behind the judge's chair on this other side is actually where the judge often comes in and out when the judge is coming onto the bench. This back here, the court staff, the court reporter, others would come through this door. So she sends them out that door and then down this hallway. The public cannot access this hallway. This is for court staff and security and others. And there may be times that there might be a reason they have someone who use that like an attorney or a defendant for whatever reason. But in any case, it's not typical, and the government's going to make that argument.
You know what's perfect about how we're doing this and the workarounds here? This is exactly what is happening on the witness stand right now with that FBI special agent, Aaron Luker, who is being asked direct questioning from Attorney Froling here, taking us through their video exhibits showing exactly how this happened, where those agents were at the moment all of these machinations are happening inside the courtroom.
And I want to be clear, I asked Chief Judge Ashley if we could get inside this hallway with a camera to show you what it looks like, just to help you see what they're alleging happened. But because it's a non-public area of the hallway, he denied us that access. So we're showing you as best we can with this animation. But now, right where I've stopped, that purple dot, that is where there is a doorway to the 5th, or to the stairs that go to the 5th floor. We had Jason Calvion earlier who showed us that staircase. It's a public staircase that's accessible both from the public hallway and also from this private hallway. The government is saying Judge Dugan wanted them to take this door, go down the stairs, and completely avoid the ICE agents. Instead, they went out, instead of going out that door to the stairway, they ended up going out the public door. Now, you see we've just had come on the screen these blue circles. They represent ICE agents that were there. And I say ICE agents, they were different federal agencies. They were all part of an ICE task force. There were 4 agents that were still in the chief judge's office at this moment. One who the judge had not noticed, a female who was sitting on the floor, was right outside the chief judge's double doors. And then another ICE agent who had gone into the chief judge's office had just come back out and stood right here, just a little bit down the hallway. So there are 2 ICE agents in the hallway as Eduardo Flores Ruiz and his attorney now go out. Instead of that side door to the 5th floor, they go out the door to the public hallway.
One other note on that I believe we touched on with Jason, but certainly should come up in testimony from the government side, is that Eduardo Flores Ruiz's attorney, the public defender assigned to him, was relatively new to that job.
Like a month on the job.
Less than a month, I believe. So as we're trying to read here on the day of opening statements into where both sides could take us, we're expecting that to be, you get to see our office messaging there.
Oh, hey, look at that. That wasn't what I forgot.
All the internal communication.
What I want to bring up, and I won't now, I'll just tell you instead because I just realized that. But there is testimony today that actually some of that audio recording included a back and forth between Judge Dugan and one of the other people who was in the courtroom at the time saying, does she know which doorway to use? Is she going to go the right way? And Judge Dugan says, I'll show her, I'll take the heat. That's the government's claim that she said that. But let's go back real quickly. I just want to wrap up one last thing with this animation.
Well,
we can go back
let me just finish my point there, that instead, basically, the public defender was not necessarily as familiar with the courthouse layout as a more established public defender may have been. So that's part of it where, again, the government's trying to set up the counter from the defense team. Well, they came out of the hallway right where your agents are. What's the big deal?
And they're saying she just maybe didn't know which way to go. So you see that purple dot again representing Eduardo Flores Ruiz and his attorney as they go down the hallway. Notice they passed a bank of elevators that's right there. This bank of elevators is the one that's closest to Judge Dugan's courtroom. They didn't go down that one. They kept going, and the agent follows. Now they get all the way off the screen here. There would be another bank of elevators that they do end up getting on, and the agent gets on the elevator with Flores Ruiz and his attorney and follows them out of the courthouse, and ultimately that's where he's arrested.
And that agent specifically, I believe we have the video. We can try to go through that as well. Maybe we'll take a quick break here first. We're showing some of the video here. That is Eduardo Flores Ruiz showing up just after 8 a.m., I believe, to the Milwaukee County Courthouse.
There he is getting off the elevator on the 6th floor.
He's that small, in the back of the screen.
Upper middle part of the screen. There is an agent already on a bench right behind him there who takes note of him immediately. And then as he walks, now this is coming toward Judge Dugan's courtroom. Flores Ruiz is coming down the hallway. He's with his attorney, and there are 2 ICE agents on the bench right there. You'll notice as they pass these agents, the agents look up and then they sort of relax in their seats like, yep, that's our guy. So you'll see that happen here momentarily. I think we've got enough of the video before it cuts away to the next shot. You see how they kind of now sit up and relax. Yep, that's the guy we were looking for. So they've recognized that's him. Now this actually shot is a little bit out of sequence because this is just before that happened. But there was, you see the attorney right there with the paper in his hand? The notepad.
Toward the camera.
He is a public defender, I believe, and I think his name is Rob Mueller from what I was told by Bill Miston. He, I believe, might be one of the people who informed Flores Ruiz's attorney and the clerk that there were ICE agents in the building. Now here comes Hannah Dugan and Judge Cervara out of their chambers, out of that private hallway or non-public hallway, to come out and look for the ICE agents they've been told are out there. They first go toward the chief judge's office, and in front of her court, she looks around. She doesn't notice anyone. Now, she doesn't realize the woman sitting on the floor by those garbage cans is an ICE agent. She doesn't seem to notice or recognize that it is. She goes this way instead. The judge sees the 2 ICE agents right here on one of the benches and interacts and has Judge Cervara there in tow. And these are the ones we showed you earlier where she says, you've got to go to the chief judge's office.
In that opening statement, U.S. Attorney Keith Alexander noting the fact, too, that both those judges being in their robes outside of their courtroom in a public hallway like that is not necessarily normal, that they would have, in a more typical setting, taken off their robes when they're not in the courtroom like that and then gone out into a public hallway.
In all the years I've been covering courts, typically you only see judges in their robes when they come on the bench. When they're in the hallway, they're in a suit or some other attire.
So now she is telling the federal agents, Judge Dugan, to go and speak with Chief Judge Carl Ashley, whose offices are down at the bottom of that hallway. And you see her in the repeated security footage here, working her way down that hallway.
There's another agent she's found.
Agents are in plain clothes, but she's identifying and sending those different agents to the chief judge's
Now, when
office.
she gets down to this end of the hallway, she finds one more, and that would be the 4th agent, if you're counting, the 4th agent other than the one she missed sitting on the floor.
And a 5th will follow, though.
And so she's walking with the 4th one, and a 5th one starts to follow. And you'll see here in a moment she recognizes the one who's following. Oh, you're with them too? You go.
But
all
she
of you
misses
in
by
there.
those trash cans. The sixth agent, the only female agent, is sitting on the floor right there as the other 5 make their way into those double doors. And that,
Now,
Brian,
there's the attorney that I told you about earlier. Do you see him shake his fist,
Yeah.
pump his fist? He sees what's going on. He sees ICE has been ordered. He thinks, all right, this
This is one of the 5 agents, though, now walking out of those doors. The other 4 are still in the chief judge's area, but he walks out right
just before.
Yeah.
Just before Eduardo Flores-Ruiz and his attorney come out. Now, watch as they come out the door. Notice that she looks both ways, and then they start walking. And she looks back again. She's kind of looking around, trying to see, is anybody following us?
The elevators are right there.
They walk past the elevators, and they keep going, and now you see the agent who's there on the left side.
So at this point, that male agent follows them. The female agent, who is sitting on the floor, also tries to follow them.
You see, I watched some other video, we don't show it here, but she does start to get up and walk this way.
Yeah.
They're clearly communicating, they're both on their phones. He follows Eduardo Flores-Ruiz and his attorney onto the elevator, and they ride it down to the basement floor, which you'll see here in a moment. They get off the elevator, the agent is still following. This is a DEA agent who's part of this ICE task force. Follows them out of the tunnel that goes out onto 9th Street. That is on the east side of the Milwaukee County Courthouse. So again, he's following behind. They're continuing to walk. I know this takes a little while for all this video to play. Here they are going out the doors onto 9th Street on the east side of the Milwaukee County Courthouse. Now, it's not clear what happens after they leave on the 9th Street side, but at some point between
Which is
here,
the east side of the building.
it's the east side of the building. At some point, they end up on the 10th Street side of the building, and by then, other agents have been summoned. They announce themselves, identify themselves to Flores-Ruiz, who then you can see running across the street on the right middle part of your screen as agents chase, and now they're chasing him down the sidewalk on the opposite side of 10th Street, where they ultimately arrest him. So that is what happened here, the interpretations of all of that, and why it happened, and how it happened, and whether or not it constitutes a crime is what is the subject of the
I will
trial.
just say kudos to you, because as I'm reading our live updates from Bill Miston in the courtroom, that is the exact timeline that the jurors are hearing right now, that the prosecutors are laying out with their first witness of the day, which has been a long time on the witness stand here. FBI Special Agent Aaron Luker taking us through that timeline and much of the same video that we have had for you here. So we may not be able to show video recordings or audio recordings from the courtroom, but we can give you an idea of what is happening inside there. Well done, sir.